In this video, I'm going to explain the drivers of cost in agentic coding tools like Memex and how you can get the biggest bang for your buck when you're vibe coding with them. In short, agentic coding tools have a completely different cost profile than tools like ChatGPT, but the costs are actually more in your control than you may realize. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly how costs work and how you can best manage them. To get there, we're going to break down, number one, how AI conversations work, number two, the difference in cost profiles between tools like ChatGPT and agentic coding tools, and number three, what that means for you and how you can manage costs in agentic coding tools. Each time you submit a message to an AI service, there's actually 4 things being submitted behind the scenes. We'll take a look at these in order. The very first thing that gets submitted to the AI service is the system prompt. This is text that's injected into the AI's context by the AI provider. It could be as simple as, "You are a helpful AI assistant." But in some cases, it's 10,000 words long, providing instructions for how to help the users achieve their goals. The second thing submitted to the AI service is any specific context about the project you're working on, which could be custom user instructions or a memory if your AI service supports memory, like in ChatGPT. The third thing that gets submitted is the preceding conversation that you've had with the AI. That could be many messages, or if you're starting fresh, it's no messages. The last thing that gets submitted is finally your user message. What that means is that user message is the tip of an iceberg for what's going into the AI service when you submit. So even if the message is simply hi, there could actually be hundreds or even thousands of words of prompting that are also being submitted to the AI service when you say hi. And this is virtually how all AI services work. So now let's take a look at how this impacts costs. New conversations with AI work the same whether you're in ChatGPT or an agentic coding tool. But there are 2 major differences in the way that they drive costs. The first is the sizes of the models being used, and the second is how quickly the context size grows. So let's unpack each. So with respect to the sizes of the models, this one's pretty simple. Most chat sessions in ChatGPT, Perplexity, or Claude default to small, runtime optimized models that are just much cheaper to serve. But those same models aren't very good at coding. If you want to code and you want to code well, you need the best models. And that's why any type of agentic coding tool that is producing good outputs is probably going to be much more expensive per query because they're using big AI models. Second, the rate of cost accumulation. So ChatGPT is an AI chat service. That means a typical conversation involves you submitting a message and it submitting a response. When we look at the broader context of how messages get submitted to an AI service, that means the conversations with ChatGPT grow linearly. On the other hand, agentic coding tools are AI agent services. That means that a typical conversation involves you submitting a message and then it performing a number of actions in response to your message in order to collect information, take action, and then see the results, and ultimately to accomplish tasks that fulfill your requests. The more autonomous the agent is, the faster the conversation grows in size. And there's a compounding effect that you begin to feel much faster than you do when you're in a tool like ChatGPT. Because for every single message that you send with a coding agent, it might submit another 10 messages, all of which have to resubmit the full conversation to the AI service. So does that mean it's better to just use ChatGPT instead of using agentic coding tools? Well, no, it's not really that simple. In ChatGPT, you may ask it how to do something and it will give you the code back and then it maybe give you a command to run it. And then you'll need to copy and paste that code into your development environment, save it, and then execute the command that ChatGPT provided. And then if there's a failure, you need to take that failure, submit it back to ChatGPT. And ideally, you need to include all of the error traces as well and ask you to help it debug, so on and so forth. If you continue going through this loop, then you actually end up performing the same actions and using about the same amount of context as the agentic coding tool would. The difference is that you're doing this manually and it's taking longer. So now you don't only have the LLM costs of ChatGPT, you also have your time factored in. So whereas the agentic coding tool might be using the LLM inference faster than you are and consuming it faster, it can typically use your time more effectively And also for tasks that you need done quickly or are outside of your area of expertise. If you don't know how to build something and you're using the agentic coding tool, you're going to get there much faster, much more efficiently, and probably even more reliably, even though it is going to start burning tokens at a faster rate. That said, if you are just spitballing, ideating, or brainstorming, use ChatGPT. It's definitely going to be faster and cheaper. Okay, so now that we understand the drivers of costs in agentic coding tools, what does that mean for you and how you can manage those costs? So there are 4 techniques to get the most bang for your buck from tools like Memex and other agentic coding tools. The first technique is using checkpoints more often. Checkpoints are like saved states for your project. If the agent produces something you don't like, don't keep snowballing forward and making the context heavier and more expensive. Instead, roll back to your last checkpoint, adjust your prompt based on what you just learned from the failed attempt, and then resubmit. Each time you do this, you're iterating from a lighter, cheaper context window rather than carrying all the baggage of every failed attempt. And over time, that saves you money and also gives you a cleaner, more controlled iteration workflow. The second technique to manage costs is to start conversations more often by managing the AI's context. So now that we understand that smaller conversations cost less per message, that means when you start new conversations, your usage is going to cost less. But new conversations are problematic because they don't know about your project. It's like you've been working with a software engineer, Alice, on your project, and then when you start a new conversation, now Alice has left the building and Bob walks in from off the street, but he has no clue about your project. He might be a good engineer, but he doesn't really know what you're trying to accomplish. The way to fix this is context management. In Memex, the context of your project gets submitted to the AI right after the system prompt. So when you're in a conversation, you can ask Memex to update that context file, and then any new conversation in a project is going to have that same context injected before the AI sees your first message. So as long as you have that context with relevant details about your prior conversations, then you can pick up new conversations and continue working at a lower rate of usage. In Memex, there are multiple ways to update the AI's context because it's so important. So if your context in a conversation starts getting really long, it will prompt you to update the context and start a new conversation. You can also trigger this at any time by clicking on the brain icon in the bottom right of the message input. And if you want, you can also select the option to include a custom prompt. So if there's anything that's important to you that you really want to make sure gets added into the AI's context, you can include it in that custom prompt. And lastly, if you have a new project that you've just imported, or maybe you've been working on a few conversations, but you've just never updated the context before, you can go to this button in the Context tab and update the full context for the project without even being in a conversation. Third technique to manage your costs is to keep track of your credit usage as you work. In the bottom right corner, just below the message input in any conversation in Memex, is a usage dial that shows the percentage of the context length that you're using. If you click on that, it expands a dial for understanding your context and credit usage. These top 3 metrics are the most important for managing your credit consumption. The first is the percentage of the AI's context window your conversation is currently using. In the default mode of Memex, you can have 200,000 tokens, or about 200,000 words, before the AI model hits its limit. In long context mode, that's 1 million tokens. So if you're at 10% context usage in the default mode, that means the conversation is 20,000 tokens long at that point in time. You can think of this as a proxy for how expensive the conversation is getting. The second piece of information is how many credits you've used in this conversation in total. This includes the total sum of tokens used in the whole conversation, including if you've rolled back to a checkpoint and then resubmitted. It's going to sum up all of those tokens. But if you revert to a checkpoint, it is going to bring your first metric, the percentage of AI context window, back down because now you're using it less. So it's useful to keep both of these in mind. One is a total sum of everything used in the conversation. The other one is relative to what is active in the conversation that you haven't reverted at that time. The third one here is an estimate of how much it costs per turn in conversation. So to be clear, a turn is every single message that gets submitted. So anytime you see Memex add new messages like I'm executing this in the terminal, I'm editing this file, I'm fetching this from the web, each of those are turns. And now this estimate varies quite a bit. There's a lot of technical details behind the hood related to API providers and the actions that Memex takes. And this can make it go higher or lower. Or if you have a really, really massive user prompt, of course, we have no way of estimating how big that's going to be. But you can think of the estimate as, in general, a conservative estimate. Usually each turn will cost less than what this estimate says. So you can see in this conversation that I'm looking at here, it's about 20 credits per turn, and I'm about midway in this conversation right now. If we look at a longer conversation here, though, you can see that it's closer to about 100 credits. This illustrates why it's a really good idea to start new conversations and manage your context as you build, because then you can keep your credit burn lower by keeping attention to this. Okay, the fourth technique now, make use of discounts. Last and finally, most AI products, Memex included, offer discounts. Make use of them. They make a difference. For example, in Memex, the more credits you buy at once, the less you pay per credit. And if you're on our highest subscription tier, the scale plan, you get a further discount on top of that. Other providers offer similar types of discounting approaches too. And once you get a feel for how many tokens you might need for a particular project, try and anticipate what your usage will be over the next couple months and then buy enough to cover all of that at once, and you'll end up paying much less per credit that way. Okay, so to recap, use 4 techniques to manage your costs with Memex and other agentic coding tools. Use checkpoints more often, start new conversations more frequently using context management to bridge context across conversations, keep track of your credit usage as you work so you can stay on top of it, and take advantage of volume discounts. All right, I hope this video was helpful in demystifying the drivers of cost in Memex and other agentic coding tools, and I hope the techniques for managing costs here are useful to you so you can get the most out of every credit you use while you're vibe coding. Happy building!